Councillor Batters. Senator Eaton.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mr. Dickey, I'd like to talk about Ontario. Ontario landlord law stems from the province's strict tenancies laws that make it illegal to modify a rental lease before that lease comes due. As such, landlords will be unable to regulate marijuana consumption in their apartment buildings with existing tenants, only with those who apply for tenancy after legalization takes effect. Am I right in saying that?
I would vary from that in two respects. It's certainly a significant concern, the question of someone with an existing lease. But someone with an existing lease, the concern with that person extends as long as they remain in the building. It doesn't end at the term of the lease. I mean, this is something I said to the House of Commons Committee, and a bunch of people looked at me, ooh, this is news. Because in Ontario, a tenant...
You can't kick somebody out.
You can't kick anybody out. If the tenant wants to stay, they can stay on a month-to-month tenancy under the old terms. Then the second part of it is, so landlords do have, under most leases, not all landlords, but many landlords, the bigger ones, have a power to make new rules and regulations. And certainly a number of them are moving forward to put a ban on both home growing and home smoking. But the question is enforcement. And again, under Ontario's law, it is not sufficient to point to a lease and the breaking of the lease, even no matter how clear the lease is, no matter how clear that power was and the rule was, the landlord to actually enforce the rule has to prove that the breaking of it causes a substantial interference with the reasonable enjoyment of other tenants or a substantial interference with the lawful rights and interests of the landlord. And the tenant one, the problem is more evidentiary because tenants don't like to come forward and testify against the neighbors they're going to have to keep living with. Well, it's a problem for us.
Well, the other thing is that what about people who have permission to buy medical marijuana? Who smoke medical marijuana? There's a woman down the hall. She showed me her tin this morning.
Yes.
What do you do about that in apartment buildings? I have a prescription. What do you do?
We are required to allow that smoking to take place, and we are required to do that under the Human Rights Code of Ontario because we must accommodate people with disabilities. So the fact that they have a medical need for the marijuana gives them, and then it's legal when it's medical, gives them the right to smoke it, and indeed to cultivate it up to the limits in the permit. But the tenants still don't have the right to do it willy-nilly. Admittedly, we are meant to have an ability to get them to control the amount, the humidity, make sure they don't damage the building. But the problem there is we don't even know they've had this permit from the federal government. That's another problem that might be this committee because the medical marijuana regime is defective in that. We don't get told that someone's smoking or going to grow in our buildings.
In Ontario, residents are permitted to consume the substance in private self-contained living quarters, including multi-residential buildings, while all public spaces will be off limits. So it's not as if I can go downstairs in my building and light up a joint. I wouldn't be allowed to do that, right?
Correct. You have to do it within your apartment. The problem is the smoke doesn't respect the boundary of your apartment.
I agree. So you're up against a rock and a hard place.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.